Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1978 81 draft third round. Draft results, third round. Let's take a look. We'll get right into it with the Expos. Who they take in the third round? Nice couple picks here. They were able to, if you have the rights to a player, you can just announce the pick as well. So the third round pick, they took Scott Sanderson with their third round pick. Oh, there's nothing over there. That's the extra cards they printed in 1980. So Sanderson actually had a nice year in 1980. So he becomes the third round pick. And then the second player from that year would become the fifth round pick. And that would be, because they had the rights, they took Rudy May with the fifth round pick. It can be announced now because they're just saying, well, we're going to do this in the fifth round. So that's why sometimes I'll say two at once just to speed this thing up. So Rudy May, another great year. Look at that. Did it with the Yankees. Not anymore. He's an Expo. Good to see the Expos get a break. Seems like they always get the short end of the stick in this stuff. Oakland. Took a couple guys from 78. Mitchell Page, his last really good year. He was Rookie of the Year in 77. Still as good in 78. And in the bullpen, they took Bob Lacey. Nice lefty setup guy. The Chicago Cubs. Not sexy. They also took two guys. They took, in center field, 81, Jerry Morales. Hit 286 as an everyday player with defense. And then they also took an 81, his teammate, Heidi Cruz. Interestingly enough, if you look at the cards, they're pretty close statistically. Heidi Cruz, look at the power though in a short sample size. 7 homers and 100 at-bats. That'll do it every time. So they're pretty happy getting these two. And the Cubs are no strangers to plenty of right-handed hitter in their lineup. They're used to that. All right, the White Sox. White Sox took some 80 guys. They took one 80 guy. They only took one 80 guy, and it was Eric Soderholm. His 1980 card. He was also a Yankee, though he was near the end of his career at this point. And that's an okay pick. Not a great pick, okay pick. And of course, he wasn't a big Yankee player anyway. Portland, fifth team on the clock. They took a couple 78 guys. They took Art Howe, very nice 78 card. Play all over the place, and look at the stick, and look, power both ways. So that makes this card really useful. 293 card and almost 500 at bats. With that versatility, that's a very nice card there. And they also, Charlie Huff is figuring out the knuckleball. Doesn't walk too many this particular year. He's a Dodger in 78. Believe he gave up a homer to Reggie in the World Series, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on that. But he's not a Dodger. We've seen a couple of Dodgers and Yankee players elsewhere, which is kind of fun. All right, with the sixth pick in the draft, it was the Mets, and this is not a flashy pick at all. They got a couple guys, a couple middle infielders here. Remember we talked that Pete Rose had to be moved to DH, unfortunately, because Ray Knight's now the third baseman. So they picked up Jerry Remy, another 300 hitter, to add to the stable of 300 hitters for the Mets. And they took a left-handed hitting shortstop who can hit okay and play well defensively. Not a flashy pick, but for a shortstop, that's not bad. And after getting all these 300 hitters like Henderson and like Remy at 313 and Youngblood at 350, you get the idea that the Mets are going to try and win this thing with batting average since their pitching is falling on difficult times. Toronto. Oh boy, wow. I really like what this team's doing. The Blue Jays took just one guy. He was from 1978, and a great one. 78, Ross Grimsley, his last great year in the league, and it was a great one. 20 wins for the Canadian neighbors. So look at this rotation that the Toronto Blue Jays have from this timeline, 78 to 81. You got Steve Clancy from 80, Grimsley 78, and Doyle Alexander's 81 card. That is solid right there. 3 starter 8s and a 6. And in the back end of the rotation, you got Victor Cruz and Jerry Garvin, Bill Moore, Marty Patton. That's not bad at all. Toronto is really going to mess things up in the American League East. They're going to be spoiler and a good one. The Dodgers with the 8th pick in the draft. All right, nothing. They just keep clicking off their keepers, and they took their 1979 Davey Lopes. Probably Lopes' best year. Double-A stealer, and that is 28 home runs. 28 home runs and a 265 batting average. And we know that he kind of falls into hard times by 80-81. His batting average really falls. All right, let me take a quick break and we'll be right back with pick number 9. The 9th pick in the draft belongs to the Texas Rangers. And they took one guy, and spectacular throwing catcher Jim Sundberg. Pretty consistent guy. Was always in the hitting 270 something during this time. But if you can get the -4 arm, you might as well do it, right? He becomes the 3rd -4 arm catcher in the league now. Stolen bases are really going to go down. All right, the Hotlanta Braves. They took another guy from 79. They're so the Mets do with batting average. The Braves are going to try this thing with raw power. They took arguably Gary Matthews' best power year of 1979. He hits 27 homers. He joins an outfield of Dale Murphy, 33 homers, Jeff Burrows, 23 in a shortened season. They got Rico Carty. They got John Mayberry. So they're going to try and bash their way to the title. The Mets are going to try and lead the league in batting average, and the Phillies are simply going to win the division, as those other teams will fail. 11th is the Kansas City Royals. They have not had a flashy draft. Very workmanlike. They took Dennis Leonard, John Wathan. They renewed their outfielder, Al Cowens. Arguably Cowens' last great year with Kansas City. They probably did the right thing letting him move on to Detroit and Seattle. It's really the last we see of Al Cowens playing at that high level. The Giants took a couple guys from 1980. They took, Darrell Evans. Defense is not good. But a B stealer, which is interesting for him. And he doesn't do well again until he's on Detroit. He really has a lull in his career between Atlanta and Detroit here in San Francisco. And they picked up a nice Tom Griffin card of 1980. Tom Griffin with a 2.75 ERA. We love the relief 4.6, so he can do it both ways. Starter in the bullpen. All right, lucky 13 is the Cardinals. They took a couple guys from 1979. I ain't starting. I ain't departing, said Gary Templeton. And heck of a shortstop. Still rangy, speed, and with the bat. And they also took Ken Reitz. So if not, they have a particularly good defense on the left side of the infield. Do the Cardinals. The Indians. With the 14th pick in the 3rd round, who did they take? Oh yes, they got the final piece of their pitching staff. They took 1981 Len Barker. He's good. He's very good. He's not really ever lights out, but he's certainly good enough. And he joins a wicked pitching staff. Gaylord Perry's Cy Young year. Eckersley for one more year. Should be on Boston, but he's not. Rick Waite's best year, Barker. Augustine Buskey, McEnany, and Jim Kern closing it out. So the Indians, they are looking to finally break through and win the American League North. Haven't done that in a long time. All right, the Padres. They went into the 79 box. They got a couple guys. They got Bob Shirley one of his best years, pitching on 3 days rest with an ERA around 3.38. Forget the losing record. This Padre team has no plans on losing. They want to win. They decided they're not going to lose anymore. And they took, not sexy, but John Walkenfuss as a catcher against lefties. They already have Bill Fahey as a catcher against righties. Boy, that's a mighty platoon. Nice. Nice work, Padres. And the halfway point is the disappointing Yankees of a year ago. What are the Yankees doing? What are the Yankees doing? We can't figure it out. They took just one guy. And Frank, you know, it's a workmanlike pick. 78 Yankees took 78 Lou Piniella. Won a World Series ring with him. I don't know, folks. He's okay. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Piniella, but a 3-0 E12 without power against righties. Hits 314 though, with 6 home runs, and they won the World Series. I don't know, folks. That's fine. Again, it's fine, but instead of going for tradition, I think the Yankees should have gone more out on a limb. But yeah. Another quick break, and we'll begin the second half of the third round. Okay. Second half, the Vegas team picking 17th. We really liked their first 3 picks. They took 3 300 hitters. Bumbry, Almone, and Milt May, hitting 318, 301, and 310. So what did they do? They took a couple 78 guys. You'll find this to be particularly interesting. 78 Mike Torres, not a Yankee. He's a Red Sox here. He gives up the home run to Bucky Denton, 163. That Mike Torres. And they combined that by taking another Yankee that the Yankees did not want, Chris Chambliss, 2E4 first baseman, and as a lefty who hits lefties pretty darn well. So we just saw Piniella, 78 Yankee, and we see another guy going to someplace else. Obviously, the blueprint of holding on to all the 78 Yankees is not working out. All right, the Twins with the 18th pick in the draft. I'm not a big fan of this, folks. But they took the 1980 Ken Landro. And boy, this guy was really talked up in 79. He was going to be the next great center fielder in baseball. Defense isn't there already, 1980, with a 281 card. This did go to the All-Star game, which was held in LA that year. That's when they were talking up how great he was going to be. And, well, I did what the baseball pundits would have done and taken him with their third-round pick. Good luck, Landro. Maybe it'll work out in a short sample size in the carryover league. Arizona. Making smart picks. They took Fernando Valenzuela and Ellis Valentine. Very high-quality players, and now they go to the bullpen and get a great Dave LaRoche card. There's no shortage of great Dave LaRoche cards for many teams. The Angels, Indians, Yankees, Twins. LaRoche has great cards sprinkled throughout his career. But as a well-traveled player, well-traveled players work best on expansion teams. Tigers, pick 20 in the third round. They decided to renew their center fielder, Ron LaFleur, and at this point, they only gave him the 1-year deal because they recognized that something's not quite right with LaFleur. They let him go to the Expos by 80, and then he plays with the Expos and White Sox, and then his career is pretty much over after that. All right, the playoff teams from a year ago. 21, the Pirates. Okay, they made a deal. Trade. We had a trade here. So the Pirates traded their shortstop, Frank Tavares, to the Yankees for Junior Kennedy and the rights to Sparky Lyle and a draft token. So they get Junior Kennedy to play short, which is okay. And Tavares is okay as well. I think the Yankees wanted the speed for whatever reason. But the real prize is getting Sparky Lyle into the back of the bullpen. And the Yankees wanted to get rid of Lyle because they already had 3 lefties. You can't have 4. So they add Righetti. Righetti unseats Lyle in the Yankee bullpen. Boston. Not crazy with how they manipulated this draft. They put themselves in a corner. They took one player from 1979, and it's Yastrzemski. But his 78 year was better. But they locked up Jim Rice and Carlton Fisk's 78 cards. So they probably should have taken Yaz's 78 and Rice's 79, but it didn't happen that way, and oh well, Boston. Doesn't matter too much. They're still the Sox. They'll still be in the playoff picture. Florida, the Marlins, surprising team from a year ago. Took a couple guys from 79. Of course, you're going to renew the 395 hitting Manny Mota with a 357 version. And they also acquired Ivan DeJesus. Now they've got a problem, though. They've got two shortstops. They got Craig Reynolds and DeJesus, and this is not a platoon. Two guys who can only play shortstop who have 1,200 plate appearances. This is something that the league has to rectify. So the phones are going to be ringing. Craig Reynolds is going to move elsewhere. Look for him to be traded at some point in this draft. He's going to be very unhappy if he's not a full-time shortstop. All right. The Brewers with the 24th pick in the draft. They took one guy from 81. They took Pete Vukovich. His first really good year with Milwaukee. 14-4. Has a really high winning percentage in 81, 82 for them. I think he wins a Cy Young in 82, but statistically he's better in 81. All right, Seattle. If there's a dark horse team to jump on the bandwagon, it's these Mariners, who somehow acquired Rich Gossage in the offseason, improved Tom Paciorek to a 320 hitter, and oh, by the way, they took two guys from 1979. Their 1979 All-Star, Bruce Bochy. The All-Star game was in Seattle, and Bochy was playing at home and got a standing ovation, as you can imagine. And they also added Rupert Jones. Hit 21 homers in 79, a Steeler, rangy center fielder. He kind of goes into a little bit of a funk, and then he's good again in like 83 and 84. I want to say he gets a World Series ring in 84 with the Tigers. I might be wrong about that. Colorado. What did the Rockies do? They went 1980 with a couple guys. One of those was Don Money, who seems to be a lifetime Rocky. They had him from his 69 card on. Money traveled around a bit, but the Rockies said, we want to keep this guy lifetime here as a lifetime Rocky. And they took 1980 Dan Petrie as a starter 7. He's okay. 10-9, 393. Nothing flashy there, but the Marlins are never a team that really drafts pitching with high priority. He was available, they took him. All right, the Phillies simply just keep checking boxes off to... They lost the World Series 2 years ago, didn't go last year. They already added Luzinski and Boone and Mike Schmidt, and this time they added the 1980 Bake McBride card to play right field, 309. They got Maddox in center. They got Gray Gross in left. Luzinski can play DH in this format, which they couldn't have done in real time. All right, the Ohio players, the Cinderella of the Fall League, led the league in wins, killing this draft. Boy, this is a dangerous team. This could be one of the first expansion teams to win back-to-back titles. They are loaded, folks. Not going to kid you. So they took Cliff Johnson as a catcher with 20 home runs in 300 at-bats. And he joins, this lineup is insane. 338, Easler, Cliff Johnson, Driesen with a nice card, Dave Cash with a nice card, Matlock gets 341, Rodney Craig gets on base, Jerry White gets on base, Jerry Mumphrey, George Hendrick, my goodness. Plus you got Norris and Blue, oh my God. I'm building a expansion team powerhouse. For all you purists out there, you can win this thing as an expansion team. It would be highly unlikely, But Ohio is going to try and buck the trend. They might be the first. They're probably the most talented team to compete for a league championship or World Series that I can recall. Houston, 29th pick on the draft. They went to the 79 box for a couple guys. It wasn't flashy. They got another lefty reliever, Don Hood, to join Sam Bito. And they got half of a third baseman. They got Mike Cubbage, nice on base percentage, to play third. Or to play second, depending. Not very well. They're kind of... I'm a little bit troubled with what Houston's doing because they've literally locked up all the... They locked up DH, catcher, and first, and they locked up their outfield. But we're getting into the fourth and the later rounds of the draft. They don't have a second baseman or a shortstop. And they were in the league championship series last year without a second baseman and a shortstop. It's going to be hard, particularly in that division with the improved Dodgers. We know the Padres are really good. All right, next up, the Angels, another team having a hot draft. They took a couple 78 guys here. They took 78 Frank Tanana, pitching on 3 days rest. And they took 78 Paul Hartzell. Actually had a better ERA in Frank Tanana in 78, 3.44. And eventually, they decided that the 79 Nolan Ryan will be drafted to complete their rotation. All right, Cincinnati Reds, this pick may have been a little bit sentimental, but that's okay. After looking carefully at all available players in the year of 1978, they simply decided they would just take their own guy, Joe Morgan. And this card, if it didn't have Joe Morgan written on it, would be a very disappointing pick because he only hits 236. But they still value the rangy second baseman, ace stealer with a high on-base percentage, lefties with power both ways. Slightly overdrafted because his numbers really dropped off after 76 and 77. That's a big decline. But it is Joe Morgan. So you can see why they still kept him as a third-round pick. Didn't let him tumble in the draft. And the final pick in the third round, the Orioles do a typical Oriole thing. They complete their pitching staff. How they do that? Well, they got Palmer, Flanagan, McGregor, and Dennis Martinez in the bullpen, in the rotation. And they went to the 1981 season and found that Sammy Stewart, believe it or not, because of the innings pitched in the year of the strike, qualifying leaders did not have to pitch as much. He won the American League ERA title that year with a 2.33 ERA, though the whip is kind of high. But he completes the bullpen with Stanhouse, Stoddard, and Tippy Martinez. My goodness, Orioles. My goodness. Still probably the favorite in the division, though I'm not quite sure what Boston and New York are doing. Like I said, I was puzzled by the Red Sox moves, and the Yankees are, yeah. Toronto looks good. Anyway, that's 3 rounds of the draft. The 4th round is always fun because I know which year the team has to pick from. You have to pick a player in each of the first 4 rounds of the draft from a unique year in the carryover league. 78, 79, 80, and 81. 3 of those 4 years have been picked. By process of elimination, I know which year the team will select from. So that makes the 4th round one of the quickest and funnest rounds of the draft. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.